Into the Solo Shot Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Dom Manna. Happy Solo Shot Saturday, everybody. We're into June, and yes, my prediction did come true. There was 1,089 solo shots by the end of May. In the last couple of days, we've gotten about 23 more to bring our grand total up to 1,112 solo shot swag moments so far this season. Really excited to continue to update that counter. I have some things in the works that I will be dropping on Twitter this week, so definitely check out at DominicManna44. And now we're past Memorial Day weekend. I hope you all had an amazing holiday weekend. Thank you to all the men and women that made the ultimate sacrifice serving this country. Now that we've passed Memorial Day, we're really starting to feel what teams are made of. And if you see in my power rankings, I've made some movement, and I'm really starting to crack down on that because I'm starting to see some teams that look like real contenders and teams that had hot starts or bad starts that are looking like pretenders or fringe teams. We're going to get towards the Midsummer Classic in July, and there's going to be guys getting moved. What teams are going to be sellers and buyers going into the All-Star break and the trade deadline? That kind of stuff is really fun to keep up with, and I will do my best to talk about the teams that I think are buying and selling as the month of June goes on. But I watched the Reggie Jackson documentary over the weekend. Phenomenal. One of baseball's most influential players, probably the most popular player from the 70s, Mr. October, was in a brand of his own. And I feel that the Reggie documentary really encapsulated what he's meant to the game, how he's grown as a man, how he has tried to put his best foot forward to pass on to the next generation of ball players. So many great cameos in there, including many guys who have passed away in the last couple of years that they got interviews with beforehand. Vita Blue, Hank Aaron. It's just really great. And we're kind of in a documentary golden age right now. When The Last Dance was dropped, while everyone's stuck in their homes during COVID, it was must watch. Everybody was glued to their screens, always just talking about the new episode. And it has had a ripple effect where now documentaries were already starting to heat up in the production world. But sports documentaries are starting to get churned out like crazy. Anybody with a great story, great career, has the chance to have a really great documentary. We see Willie Mays with the Say Hey documentary that was on HBO, Reggie Jackson's, which was on Amazon. There is going to be a Yogi Berra documentary. The Nolan Ryan documentary was fantastic. And now, Barry Lamar Bonds, the home run king, they have announced that they are working on a documentary following the checkered career of Mr. Barry Bonds. And I, for one, am so excited for it. I know I'm going to lose some of you guys that are all about staying clean and honoring the clean players. Baseball hasn't really chose to toe that line. During the steroid era, the peak of the steroid era, the home run trace with McGwire and Sosa in 98, Major League Baseball turned a blind eye to the many players in baseball that were using performance-enhancing drugs because they were profiting. Baseball was back in the limelight, and everybody was making their money. Now, then there's public pressure towards baseball to crack down on these players that aren't playing clean. And Bud Selig starts handing out suspensions and testing regularly for steroids. To me, those players that allegedly used during that era, we don't know. Me and you can sit here and get a pretty good idea of who used and who didn't. But are the guys that are currently in the Hall of Fame that are allegedly clean from that era, were they clean their whole careers? Are the guys that everybody thinks are guilty that are outside of the Hall of Fame necessarily steroid users? Regardless, it takes immense skill to play in the major leagues, let alone dominate it the way that Barry Bonds did. And I think you can argue in a way that nobody has dominated the batter's box since Ted Williams. Barry Bonds, 7-time league MVP. The writers gave him his flowers while he was playing, decided not to give him his flowers when it was time to vote for the Hall of Fame. 8-time Gold Glove winner. The man was intentionally walked over 120 times in one season, has the record for most intentional walks and most walks in Major League Baseball history to go along with the home run record of 762. Barry Bonds fell under 100 hits short from 3,000 and 4 RBI short of 2,000. You think if teams were actually pitching to Barry Bonds at the height of his powers, that he wouldn't be in the 3,000 hit club and 2,000 RBI club as well, which are both elite inner circle milestones? That takes incredible talent. And despite Barry Bonds allegedly juicing, he had that 73 home run season, which is still the single season record. He only led the league in home runs 2 times. Very similar to a Hank Aaron, who didn't lead the league in home runs and have gaudy home run numbers most years, but he compiled over a long career. Barry Bonds, the person and the player, is so interesting. And I feel if this documentary presents him correctly, it can go a long way with my generation and generations after that didn't get to watch all of his career, that will eventually have writers' votes one day to hopefully continue to push the narrative that the home run king should be in the Hall of Fame. I hope they dive into the problems with Barry Bonds, the reasons why he's kind of a villain outside of steroids, his problems with Jim Leland when he was in Pittsburgh, his problems with media and teammates while he was in San Francisco. That kind of stuff I don't want to get shied away from. But Barry Bonds, at bat, you can argue, is the greatest hitter of all time. The numbers are ridiculous. He had an insane eye for the strike zone. And if you gave him a pitch to hit 762 times, it was going into the stands. We're in a documentary golden age right now. Please let me know below what player or story in baseball that you'd love to see a documentary about. I prefer documentaries when the player is still living, so you can have their point of view and their teammates' point of view along with it. But if you tell me there's a baseball documentary out, I'm going to watch it. And I'm so excited for this Barry Bonds one. This Yogi Berra one's going to be fantastic as well. Really awesome career and guy. And I hope that they continue to make these documentaries for these insane Hall of Fame level players, whether it's a series like The Captain with Derek Jeter or just a nice hour and 45-minute movie about amazing careers like Reggie Jackson. As we move down to first base, we continue with movie-like stories. Michael Soroka pitched for the first time since 2020. He's had multiple injuries and setbacks, had a really hot start to his career in Atlanta. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the season. And while he didn't look amazing in his first start, he made through it healthy. And when you've only started 3 games in the last 3 seasons, you got to feel great for Michael Soroka. That Braves team is boringly good. And despite their rotation injuries, I think they are going to be just fine. Michael Soroka will have some moments this season, and it's great to see him back on the mound. But you're talking about mound returns. Liam Hendriks beat cancer. And this was a very emotional thing for me to watch. Liam Hendriks discovered that he had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma last offseason in December. He announced it on January 8th that he would be taking chemo and that he was going to beat this thing. Most people assumed that if he came back, it would be in the back half of the season. And even then, they might just shut him down for the year and let him get right, come back next season. Some people thought his career might be over, that he's made 3 All-Star appearances, made good money. If his health isn't right, that's the most important thing, just walks away. But Liam Hendriks, the Australian wonder, works his way back, has insane strength of mind. All the amazing quotes in the Jeff Passan article about it. He is built different. And I think you have to be built different to be a Major League Baseball player, a professional athlete, but especially a closer. Those are high leverage situations when all eyes are on you. And more often than not, Liam Hendriks has came through and been nails. And he did the same thing with cancer. In his minor league debut, he wore a shirt that in all caps said "struck out cancer." And he wanted to make his debut at home in front of his family and the home fans that haven't had a lot to cheer for in Chicago so far this season. And I don't care that he didn't have a good outing. The fact that he made it back to that mound in the month of May after announcing he was taking chemo for his cancer in January. Tip of the cap. One of the best stories you will see in baseball all season. And I hope that Liam Hendriks just continues to get back to his old form. I know he doesn't need any more people rooting for him. He is his own best hype man. But if you are not a fan of Liam Hendriks, I hope that this story gets you there, because there's not many better people to root for in baseball right now. So these amazing returns, building off of these Hall of Fame stories. But I talked about the active Hall of Famers in today's game. I gave credit to the 6 guys that would walk in first ballot already, and then the group of 8 guys that I think are well on their way. But when I dived into this through discussions in the comment section with you great people, as well as with some friends offline, I started looking into the potential active Hall of Famers, because statistically, in any given year of baseball history, there are 30 to 40 active Hall of Famers. And I was only at 14. So there's a lot of other guys that are either really young and it's too early to say, or guys that you're not thinking about, the sneaky Hall of Famers that end up getting in. When Scott Rowland was playing, I don't think a lot of people were saying he's a Hall of Famer out loud, but he put together a Hall of Fame resume. And the player that I'm going to talk about really even surprised me with how good of a case he is building. He is turning 33 years old this season. After 2 abysmal years in Chicago where he was just buried in the depth chart on the infield. He is traded to Oakland and becomes an everyday player, breaking out in 2016, and 2 of the last 5 seasons being a top 3 MVP vote getter. I'm talking about Texas Rangers second baseman Marcus Semien. Yes, people, hear me out. 37 and a half career WAR. He's turning 33 this season. He has a really good shot to push for 60 WAR, but I think the biggest part of his case is the position. When he signed that 1-year prove-it deal with Toronto, his other top 3 MVP vote season, he moved to second base. And I think that is a huge part of him being a sneaky Hall of Fame candidate. Shortstops and second base are both underrepresented in the Hall. There's not a ton of great offensive shortstops and second basemen in the history of baseball. You look at second basemen all time, only 15 of them have 200 plus home runs. Marcus Semien currently has 194. He is signed in Texas, which is a bandbox of a ballpark, till 2028, the rest of the season and 5 seasons after this. Marcus Semien has a real chance to be one of 4 second basemen with 300 career home runs. And to me, that starts to really put him in the conversation. He's at 600 career RBIs. I think conservatively, if he does what he's been doing the last couple seasons in Toronto and Texas, he'll get to 1,000 RBIs, which in the middle infield is a lot more than, say, a first baseman. He has over 100 stolen bases. I think he can get close to 200, which is a nice little bonus. It's not going to make him a Hall of Famer, but it adds to his case and his WAR. And you're looking at this guy, 1,300 career hits. Marcus Semien has a really good chance at the rule of 2,000, where the writers consider you a Hall of Fame candidate if you have over 2,000 hits. Marcus Semien hitting leadoff for the Texas Rangers. He currently leads the American League in WAR. If Marcus Semien is able to win an MVP this year or one of these other years in Texas as the best player on a contending team, he will be one of 10 second basemen to win an MVP award, and only one of those guys is not ever going to be in the Hall of Fame. That's my favorite player as a kid, Dustin Pedroia. The rest of those guys, Hall of Famers, and Jose Altuve, who was on my list of 8, I think he is well on his way to being a Hall of Famer. Marcus Semien, he came up at 22 years old, which is usually a good sign, but his first 2 years were wasted in Chicago. But if you look at his career from Oakland till now, he has been a very good hitter at a position where you don't typically get a lot of hitting. If there really is 30 to 40 active Hall of Famers right now, yes, some of them will be young players that are only a year or 2 into the league, that their story isn't written yet. But if you're looking for a sneaky Hall of Fame guy, a guy that you can follow for a maybe one day Hall of Fame case, I hope that a bunch of you jump on the Marcus Semien bandwagon with me. I know when I saw his career, I was thoroughly impressed with where he is career-wise, and I think that this contract, how he's playing in that ballpark with that lineup protecting him, he has a really good shot of hitting the Hall of Fame thresholds. I like to see 2,000 hits, 1,000 runs scored, 1,000 runs driven in, and 300 home runs. And doing that as a second baseman should give him an extra leg up when it comes to Hall of Fame voting. Right now, he's only a one-time All-Star, one-time Gold Glove, one-time Silver Slugger. It's possible that as he ages, he's able to get more of those. But his case is really going to be analytics and statistics based. It's not going to be about the awards. Gets that MVP this season, winning an MVP over Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge, guys that also I think most people would put in the Hall of Fame before Marcus Semien. I think you really start to have a conversation where for his position, him winning that MVP wouldn't be so dissimilar to Paul Goldschmidt winning it last season. Paul Goldschmidt, obviously the better body of work, but Marcus Semien, whether he gets that MVP or not, I think is the sneakiest possible Hall of Famer in today's game. Go check out his baseball reference page. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm not saying he's a slam dunk. I'm not saying he is definitely going to be a Hall of Famer. I'm just saying he's a guy that's on the path that I've never heard a single person speak about in that light. And I wanted to give him his flowers first. So you heard it here, the Solo Shot Sports Podcast. We'll see in a decade if I'm right. And let's move it over to third base. Tons of great moments on June 3rd in baseball history. You have Josh Gibson's historic Yankee Stadium home run. You have 300 home runs for Stan Musial, which is a great milestone. But the player that I want to talk about today is a Hall of Famer in the 3,000 hit club, and that is Mr. Eddie Collins. Eddie Collins, if you look at his baseball reference page, (3,315 hits, which is fantastic. 333 career batting average, an 124.2 career WAR. He won an MVP and was part of 6 World Series championship teams. Yes, I am aware that he debuted in 1906 and retired in 1930. But this is a story that I feel like does not get talked about enough. Man had almost 10,000 official at-bats, scored over 1,800 runs, drove in just under 1,300, and yes, he has 741 career stolen bases. When Lou Brock set the record that Rickey Henderson shattered later on, he was passing the likes of Eddie Collins on the list. On this day, Eddie Collins became a member of the 3,000 hit club, and he did it before it was cool, before it was an automatic Hall of Fame qualifier. He was just trying to help his team win and get on base. 33 career home runs. The dead ball era will do that to you. There wasn't a lot of home run hitting back in those days. But I feel like Eddie Collins' story does not get talked about enough. You got a guy that played for the Chicago White Sox during the Black Sox scandal. I think that is super interesting. He's a guy that was not indicted for throwing the series. And if you look at his postseason stats, in that 1919 World Series, he hit 226. So a guy that was a career 333 hitter, batted 226 in the World Series where there was tons of controversy. But everything about Eddie Collins' character was able to make it past such a dangerous time in baseball history with that throwing of the World Series. And I feel like a guy that was part of that team, a guy that had such an unbelievable career as a run producer, getting on base, stealing bases, scoring runs. Things that are almost a lost art in today's game. That's why I say 1,000 runs scored, 1,000 RBIs. To me, that starts to put you in the, is he a Hall of Famer conversation? Doesn't make you a Hall of Famer, but compiling enough of those, it's a skill. There's so many guys that were great for short periods of time, and you look up their stats and they have like 700 runs driven in or 800 runs scored, and that's pretty good. But when you really start to talk about the Hall of Famers, the baseline guys, I want to see those guys get to the century, the 1,000 mark. The century mark would be 100, but you get what I'm saying. Eddie Collins, inner circle 3,000. I'd say 741 stolen bases is an inner circle stolen base guy. And a guy that just does not get talked about enough. Throwback third base has been such a fun thing, and I can't believe that I've done 10 of them already. I enjoy keeping these stories alive and hopefully passing them on to another generation. Eddie Collins, 3,000 hits on this date, June 3rd. Such an unbelievable accomplishment. He was one of the first men to ever do it. And I hope that for those of you that weren't familiar with his story, go and check out his baseball reference page. Go and read some articles about him, because he was larger than life in those days. And talking about larger than life, everything is bigger in New York. And right now, two of the premier home run hitters in the sport reside in the Subway Series. Pete Alonso, Major League leading 20 home runs. Over 40% of his hits this season have went over the fence. And then you got the captain, Aaron Judge. Same deal, 18 home runs this season. And that is about 40% of his hits have went over the fence. These two guys are not just huge home run hitters, they are huge people. And I expect right now, with them both pacing for 60 home runs, that we could have a Maguire Sosa-like home run chase right now in New York, where both of those guys are saying, who could pass Aaron Judge's 62 for the most home runs hit in New York in a season? And I think while that's not as fun as the possibility of a guy someday breaking Bonds' 73, doing it in New York, garnering that kind of attention, that kind of pressure to do it there, it could be one of the best storylines in baseball this season. And I hope that these guys continue to mash and make this interesting, because this season could end up being remembered as the Judge Alonso home run race. Appreciate you guys listening as always. You can follow me on Twitter at DominicMana44 for more baseball content. Got some really awesome things in the works that I can't wait to share with y'all. Let's keep this tracker going up. Let me know in the comment section below about who you think is very deserving of a baseball documentary and what you guys think about my bold call that Marcus Semien has the chance of being on a Hall of Fame path. I hope you guys all enjoy your solo shot Saturday, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.